Good morning, students. So we are here again to study the remaining part of separation of substances. In the first volume we had discussed certain things which we are going to recapitulate very fast so that we can continue the chapter further. So let us see, the chapter what we dealt was separation of substances. In that chapter we had studied about matter, what matter is. Matter has weight and occupies space. There are two types of matter, pure substance and impure substances. Now we had studied about why do we need separation. We need separation to remove undesired constituents, to obtain desirable substances, and to obtain highly pure substances. Then we had also studied about the different methods of separating things. I had already mentioned that there are three types of mixture. That means solid is mixed with solid, or liquid is mixed with liquid, or solid is mixed with liquid. So in this, first we are going to study how we are going to separate solid from solid. In that we had talked about hand picking, then threshing, then winnowing, sieving and magnetic separation. All this is well defined from this figure. As you can see, hand picking, that means you are separating using your hand. Then threshing, that means you are going to beat the stalk with the grains on this log so that you get the desired grains. Winnowing, you are going to pour it from a little height so that the husk particle they get carried away with the wind and the grain is collected vertically on the ground. Then we had talked about sieving. Sieving, we use this frame in which the net is been fixed and the pebbles and stones are being separated from the to get a fine sand for the construction purpose. Then you have seen the magnetic separation. In this, the magnetic filling or the iron fillings is separated from the mixture with the help of this magnet bar. Once you move the magnet bar here, all the iron get attracted towards the magnet. Okay, this scrap iron is used in big scrap yard to separate the magnet from the iron, from the garbage. Separate the iron from the garbage with the help of this magnet. Okay. Now we were talking about solute, solvent, solution and solubility. This I had explained with the help of this diagram. In this, the solute is the thing which we dissolve in the liquid. Solvent is the major part of the solution, that is the liquid part. And when we mix this solute and the solvent, we get the solution. Solubility means the amount that can be mixed in this mixture at a given temperature, and basically the universal solvent is water. And what do you mean by saturated solution? Saturated solution means that after a certain limit at a given temperature, nothing else can be added to it or nothing else dissolves in it. That means that is its saturation point. To increase the like if you want to dissolve more things in that, you need to increase the temperature for that. Now children, we are going to move ahead from this topic. Now we are going to study how to separate soluble solid from liquid. Certain things are soluble in solid, certain things are not soluble in solid. Like you can see salt or sugar. If you stir salt or sugar in water, what happens? It gets dissolved. So now how do we separate it? We separate it with the help of evaporation. The best example for this evaporation is the best example is we obtain salt from the sea water that is allowed to stand in a pit, that this big pits are called the lagoons, Over a period of time, then this gradually this water gets evaporated and leaves behind the salt, which is again refined, and then we get the edible salt. Then condensation. What happens when, what do you mean by condensation? The cooling of water vapor into liquid is called condensation. This you can see in this diagram. You can see big lagoons are being made for the sea water, big lagoons, and here the sea water is collected, which gets evaporated, and you get heaps of salt from the mixture of sea water. Okay. Now let us move further. Now we are going to talk about insoluble solid from liquid. Certain certain solids are not soluble in water. Like we had studied about sugar and salt, it was soluble in water, but there are certain things which are not soluble in water. How do we obtain the clear form of it? With the help of filtration. Like suppose if you stir sand and water together, dissolve it, when it passes through filtration, then you get the clear water from it. Suppose you use a strainer, like you use a strainer at home, which is the best example. You make tea at home, isn't it? So when you are going to have the tea, what do? You don't straight away drink the tea. You strain it, isn't it, with the help of a small sieve. The liquid, whatever the leftover is there, that is called the residue, and whatever passed through the strainer is called a filtrate. As you can see, this is a cup of tea. Very tempting, isn't it? This is the strainer. The things which are left in this the strainer is called the residue, and the things that is coming out, leaving the residue, is called a filtrate. Okay. Then you can see we can do it with the help of funnel also. This is called a funnel, children. This is called a funnel, and with the help of the filter paper. What you have to do? You have to take the filter paper, fold it half, again half, and make a cone out of it. Then this filter paper is fixed in the funnel, or it is kept in the funnel, and the mixture of mud and water passes through this funnel where the filter paper is kept. Now what happens? The filter paper stops the muddy water to move down, stops the mud to move down, and the clear water comes down, and the mud particles is kept here. The residue is collected over here in the filter paper. Now moving ahead, there is another way to separate solid from the liquid, insoluble solid from the liquid. That is sedimentation. What sedimentation means? Like suppose if you again stir sand and water or mud and water, what happens? After mixing it, if you leave it without disturbing, what happens? After some time you see that the sand is collected, it is being heavier, it is collected down, and the water comes up, isn't it? And there is along with sedimentation, we follow it with decantation. Decantation means that the upper part of the clean water, you pour it in another bowl. So you can, so slowly it is transferred to the different bowl. This again can be explained through this diagram very clearly. You see, suppose whatever things are there which is not soluble in water, after you leave it still for some time, it is settled down. Now what happens? The upper part is again poured in this different container. Though sedimentation and decantation is another form of separating the substance, yet it is not very pure, because you can still see that certain impurities are remaining. Okay. Now let us move further. There is another method to do so, that is loading. Loading is a method used for faster sedimentation of finer impurities. What happens when we use an alum, that is a colorless astringent. You hang that alum in a string and you move it in the solution. It makes the mud particles, soil particles heavier, and it settles down. It is a faster way to, it's just like sedimentation only, but it is a faster way of sedimentation. Then another way of taking out solid from a liquid is churning or centrifugation. You must have seen or must have seen in the movie also, or must have noticed it at home also, that mama takes out cream out of curd. How does she do that? She keeps on stirring, 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 or rotating. Must have seen in the movies Krishna Kanhaiya, the trying to have those butter, isn't it? How do they get it? You keep on churning like this, and then the cream becoming lighter, it comes up, and the water particles, it stays down. You try, take some cream, put little water in that, and keep on beating, 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 beating for some time. You will see you can have fresh cream. It is tasty also. Again, that can be explained with the help of this diagram. You can see in muddy water, alum is used, so it helps in sedimentation. See, the water, the mud is collected down and the clear water is seen here. And again, for this is a butter churner. In olden days, they used to do it with the hand, and nowadays, latest technology, we do with the help of a mixer grinder. Okay, now things have become little easier for us, isn't it? Previously, people used to work really hard, and nowadays, latest technology is making work easier for us. Now, when we talk about how do we separate liquid from liquid, again, there are two types of liquid, children: miscible liquid and immiscible liquid. Now, you will ask me, what is miscible liquid? Miscible liquid are two types of liquid which mix with each other. You cannot find, like, you cannot discriminate. Like, suppose, have you ever had honey water? Honey and water? Or have you ever poured a few drops of ink or indigo, what mama uses at home, in water? What happens? It totally mixes up with the water. This is called miscible liquid. Miscible liquid means you cannot see a separate layer of these two liquids. So now, how can it be done? How can it be separated from each other? This can be done with the help of distillation. It is also a way of obtaining liquid. In distillation, two methods are used: evaporation and condensation. Now let us talk about immiscible liquid. Immiscible liquid are liquid that cannot mix with each other. And the best example is what? The best example is oil and water. Suppose you take a glass of, half a glass of water, pour 2-3 spoons of oil in that and try to stir it very hard. But as soon as you will stop stirring, you will see that the oil is floating on the top, because oil is always lighter than the water. That is why we can light up those floating candles. So how can you separate this immiscible liquid? Immiscible liquid means that cannot be dissolved in water. You can straight away see two layers of it. How can you do that? You can do that with the process of decantation. Decantation, I told you previously, that means you have to separately pour it into a different bowl. The upper part you have to pour it in a different bowl. This is done with the help of a separating funnel. Again, that can be seen with the help of a diagram. Children, you can see the diagram. As you can see, I told you this is called miscible liquid, ink and water, isn't it? Here also, how you can see, this is being heated up, water vapor, and again it is being cooled. You can see some ice is kept there, and water droplets is collected. So evaporation and condensation is taking place together. This is distillation. This is also distillation, but this is a regular method. This is a lab method to do that. See, you can see the burner and a tripod stand. You can see that the beaker, the solution is being heated, and what happens? The water vapor is coming out. It is kept in ice water, and the water is vapor is being changed into distilled water. That is why this is called distillation. You can see this separating funnel. This is two immiscible liquid. This is lighter liquid, which is oil, and this is the heavier liquid. So we can obtain the heavier liquid and the lighter liquid with the help of this separating funnel. So children, we have already talked about the various ways of separation. I want to tell you little for your knowledge about the different types of mixture. There are two types of mixture: homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture. So I would like to tell you the difference between the homogeneous mixture and a heterogeneous mixture. You can see in solid, what is homogeneous mixture? Homogeneous mixture is that all the alloys, like once they are mixed, you cannot discriminate, you cannot separate them. Like brass, in which copper and zinc is mixed. Like suppose steel glass, what you use at home, you just say it is a steel glass, but it is in that iron, carbon and manganese are mixed. And in solid form, what is heterogeneous mixture? It is also a mixture, but then there are different things, you can separate them nicely, very easily. With your naked eyes you can separate rice and stone, sand and salt, pepper and salt, chalk and sugar, and salad. Suppose if you make a mixed salad, what you can separate the cucumber, you can separate the potato, onion, or whatever ingredients is there in the salad, you can separate it easily. Now the liquid form of homogeneous mixture is a solution of spirit in water. It is very difficult to separate it from each other. But heterogeneous, this is also a mixture, but oil and water you can see separately two different layers. And as I have already told you that it can be separated with the help of a stainer, isn't it? Now when we talk about the gaseous form, homogeneous mixture in gaseous form is air. You cannot, like suppose you see air around you, you cannot see this is oxygen or this is carbon dioxide, this is water vapor. We cannot. So that is called homogeneous mixture, and there is no such heterogeneous mixture in gaseous form. So children, I hope you all have understood this lesson. Now one earnest request, you are going to read this lesson very carefully. Make a note of all the important points. Whatever you have understood from this lesson, make a note of it. As I always tell you, make a post note of it. That means you have understood the chapter, and then you try to read and try to understand the definition. What are the different terms, the terms which are used in this chapter, what is the meaning of it, that you have to understand. Once you will understand, you will know it by heart. Okay. Thank you children. Have a nice day and please study well.